Anche da parte mia un saluto a tutti e un ringraziamento al Signore e alla Vergine Santa che ci permettono di trovarci assieme fraternamente e di continuare il nostro cammino.
Also a greeting from me to all and thanksgiving to the Lord and the Holy Virgin who allow us to find ourselves together as brothers and to continue our journey and our work. Since it is the beginning of a new Christianity school cycle, allow me to insist on a premise. I have a way of tackling problems that sometimes makes people say, "Why is Father Antonio always a little pessimistic and does not enhance things more?" I want to explain it to you. If you go to the doctor asks you how you are. He questions you on your symptoms, of which you can discuss, and he gives you some advice, and sometimes tells you that it is not exactly right what you are doing, and you do not say to him, "How is it, this pessimistic man?" Because the man, that doctor loves your health, and he knows that his work is not to tell you, "Oh, how you are good," but his work is to help you feel better. So, if you hear some small reprimands from me, take it like so. A concern for the health of your heart and your soul, not only for individuals, but for the communities of the whole movement of the Church. We have a responsibility to the whole world. With this introduction, I venture myself to say, over these years, I have noticed that some of you toward the School of Christianity have seemed to make some positions, premises, that are not exactly right. I will list some of them. Sometimes I hear someone say, "In the end, they are always the same things." Another says, "Oh, it is a little difficult. We do not understand much." Still someone else says, "Yes, I come to the School of Christianity. Then, when we are in our small group, we do what we like most." And then another one says, "I like to listen to the lessons, but then the work that we would have to do, it is not my business." They are all wrong positions. The worst one is the first one. To say that they're always the same things is equivalent to the position of a man that repeats to his wife, "I love you." And she answers to him, "You always tell me the same things." Do you understand? When the words we are trying to transmit are love to the Lord, to life, love to the Church, love to yourself, you cannot say that they're always the same things. But rather you should be happy. Then there is the position of those who say, "For me it is a little difficult." And my answer is this. This should serve the groups of the communion. It would be nice if the group began to listen, for example, to the difficulties of those who find it difficult to understand. And then if in it someone took the task of saying it in a simpler manner and to help the others. And we know that some things one cannot understand with the mind, but understand with the heart and with actions, putting these things to act. And then to those of you who want to do what you want, even in small groups who have made School of Christianity on other texts, believing to be the most pleasant ones, I say, this is the same situation where one goes away from the doctor who has given him medicine. The person goes home and then buys and takes the medicine that he wants to. You can do anything, but let me say that there is a little lack of intelligence here. And there is also for those who like to listen and not to do, however, the personal work. It is not like this. You cannot hear the truth, hear talk of love, and then watch the world as it is with all of its tragedies and say that you have nothing to do. You must work. The first job is to deepen the things we learn and put them into practice, comparing them with others. Help, and a little bit at a time, friendship grows. And this is which we are doing in this experience of the church. I have spoken as a doctor does to the sick and who have entered into his office to be helped. Then I am glad for all the beautiful things and everything in you which is healthy, robust, and strong. We must help ourselves. This is my introduction. I should begin with the book, with certain pages, but it is not essential to enter the theme straight off. I would like to explain to you my point of view, what moved me to write what I wrote, and with which concerns and with which heart. I will tell you that the concerns that I contemplated were many. There were so much so that at a certain point I asked myself this question. Is it not that we are doing something in the wrong way with respect to the method? Do we need to rethink something? And let me explain why. We know the contents of the truth. For many years we know the contents of truth. Prayer, catechism, the Eucharist, the sacraments, prayer. We know these things. But we lack the organicness of the things that we know and the beauty of the whole. Then I understood that perhaps there's another thing that we are missing. We are missing a bit of truth. I will explain. Here too I will speak as a spiritual doctor. It has happened to me in recent times, and the tragedies of our time are also reflected in our history. In the past few months, I've had to meet at least a dozen couples in crisis. For couples in crisis, I mean people arriving almost to the decision of separation with all their problems relating to children, and they are seeking help from me. At a certain point, I realized, with terror, that something was not working. It was this. Is it possible to listen to a husband and wife talk for hours of their problems, their disappointments, their difficulties, of their impatience, of their I cannot do it any longer, and to not hear them once nominate Jesus Christ? This has been happening almost always to me. Sometimes while I was listening, I wondered, where is Jesus' place in this couple? I know that they are both believers. Both of them pray. I know both of them go to Mass. I know both of them participate in the school of Christianity. Both of them receive the Eucharist and the sacraments. But when we get to the question and behold the organicness, I would expect them at a certain point, this Jesus involved in the sacrament with them, then at least as a regret, or as crime, or as a prayer request, in something it would come out. I'm not saying that it's not in their heart. But at the moment in which the thought is expressed, that the decisions that they make, it has not come out. Then, in the face of the hard part of the discussion, the suffering, I can no longer resist the suffering that he gives me and what I do to him, I ask myself, in their house, is there a crucifix? We believers believe precisely in this. No one has greater love than the one who gives his life for the person he loves. To give life means that you take it. When Jesus says that no one has a greater love than to give life to those whom he loves, he is thinking about the fact that life is ripping him up. To give life means that they will whip him, they will pierce his heart, they will despise him, they will spit in his face, and all the worst things that you might think of for a beloved person. We believe and we think of these things. So I am not astonished by a person who tells me he or she makes me suffer. But I would expect to hear un echo. Also hear at least crying in displeasure of, I know I should be capable to accept the suffering that comes to me in love. I know that in love, he who suffers and he who loves me more suffers more. Except in some rare cases, I repeat, this image, this inspiration, this beat of the heart, this sadness and melancholy of the heart does not emerge. What emerges is my law. It is twisted, or it's rights, and it has a desire to behave politely. But you cannot find anything typically Christian. And let's take an opposite case. think of two young people who are not leaving each other, but a couple that is about to be formed. And you see them happy, a little more willing to listen. However, here too, when do I hear a young man in regards to his girlfriend capable to mention the Eucharist? Do you remember the letter of St. Paul? Husbands, love your wives. You have to love your wife as your own flesh, and your flesh nourishes itself and it gives nourishment. The Eucharist is a nuptial question. It is an infinite tenderness of God's love for me. I would very much like to hear sometime a young man who says, I would like to be the Eucharist for you, and you should be it for me. You see, it is not only in the ugly and sad moments, but also for the beautiful moments. And then we can talk about so many people I hear who speak to me of their work, their occupations, or even their problems of work and of their success at work. But where is the person that says to you, how I am proud that God puts me to work every morning? Do you remember the gospel? When you have done everything you say, we are useless servants. It is enough for me to be the servant of God in work and in my concerns. Or when I hear parents that recount scholastic problems and the relationship with their children, and at a certain point they say, but I know that my children are His. I know He thinks of them. Sometimes I am sad because I cannot be that father or mother that I would like to be, but I know that my fatherhood, motherhood is only a sign. And when I cannot be a good mother and father, I have a little sadness, but also some pride inside of me, because I know I have to return it to God. And every evening I take my children and entrust them to God. We could continue on further, but you understand what I'm trying to tell you. When I speak of organicness, of beauty, of putting together the pieces, I do not mean an intellectual work. We know many things, but we need to organize them better. Sure. But do you believe that the important thing is to put the ideas together? Do you think the thing is important when I write 1, 2, 3? No. Believe me, there is something else more important. That is the person of Jesus. Jesus is a living person. I haven't talked to the council yet, but after these reflections I have made, I have almost decided that with the next spiritual exercises, we will have as the theme what I have most dear to the world, and that is the person of Jesus. These are things we know, but how is it that Jesus does not enter? When I was sitting to discuss problems of separation, you know what was coming to my mind? It was coming to my mind Madeleine de Brel, incredulous, who found herself with a group of Christian friends, and she wrote, we all sat around together to have our discussions, and there I was hearing the speaking about Jesus Christ, in a way as if he had been alive, as if he had entered, and as if he was sitting on a chair. He could not have been more real. Imagine, these people spoke of Jesus as if he were the one that could enter from one moment to the next and be there. They were talking about him as one that was there. So I ask myself, when I have couples before me who are in a crisis, I am asking myself, where is Jesus? Where is Jesus' place in this situation? Can it be the same thing when having to deal in your family where you live in great pain, where there is an illness? I have only given examples of facts which have occurred to me recently. So you understand, the organicness that we want to achieve is actually a person. In M.E.C, we want to create communities and groups where Jesus is a living person. So that when two people who arrive at the point of going to a lawyer because it is inevitable their separation, first they put themselves in their knees. Then that there are so many problems they would solve themselves. If in times of beauty and of our youth one prays more, one talks more of Him, it is a serious matter that a husband and wife do not speak for years. But it is perhaps even more serious that they do not speak together about another. At what level in our families is there not only personal prayer, but the prayer of two or three, if there is a child? At what level is the organicness of relationships? Up to what point is Jesus not just a feast of stone, meaning that he should be there, but as he is not there, in his place there is instead a statue, or a picture, or a painting? I should argue with you knowing that I am arguing with Jesus. I should give you a kiss knowing that I'm giving a kiss to Jesus. I should feel the desire of your body knowing that I feel the desire of the body of the Lord. It is this that we are missing. Let me give you another example. It is a text that you have already heard.
Dovrei sentire il desiderio del tuo corpo sapendo che sento il desiderio del corpo del Signore, e avanti così. È quello che ci va. Allora, se vi faccio un esempio.
Okay, I will read to you. It is Father Duval.
Questo invece mi è venuto un testo.
He tells of his prayer experience in his family.
Però oggi che festa è? La Madonna del Rosario. Avete detto Rosario. Dov'è il Rosario dentro in famiglia? Come una volta.
Okay, I want to reread it because it is good for us. In my home, religion had no solemn nature. We limited ourselves to recite daily evening prayers altogether. It remained deeply carved in my memory. The position with which my father took in those moments of prayer. He returned tired from work from the fields, and after dinner, he knelt down on the earth, supported his elbows on a chair, and his head held between his hands, without looking, without making a movement, nor giving the slightest sign of impatience. And I thought to my father, who is so strong, who governs the house, who guides the oxen, who does not bow down to the mayor, to the rich, or to the wicked. My father before God becomes like a child. How his aspect changes when you put him to speak with him. He must be a very great God if my father kneels before him. But he must also be very good if one can speak to him without changing one's clothes. On the contrary, I never saw my mother kneeling. She was too tired in the evening to do so. She sat in our midst, taking into her arms the smallest sibling. She prayed in silence in her prayers from the beginning until the end, and she never stopped praying for a moment while looking at us one after another. Not speaking even if the littlest ones were disturbing her, not even if a storm was raging on the house or the cat did some misfortune. And I thought, he must be a very simple God, if one can talk to him while holding a child in one's arms and wearing an apron. And he must be a very important person if my mother, when she speaks to him, pays no attention to the cat nor to the storm. The hands of my father and the lips of my mother taught me important things about God, more than catechism. It is a family scene of those kinds that once upon a time it was still possible to see. People did not have many contents and did not know many things. But God was a living person, was part of the house, and the child looked and wondered about God, watching his father and mother. It is something of this type that I am intending. You see, we risk to know many things, more things, and to do plenty of things. We do many things, meetings. But the question is, are we not perhaps lacking the essential? Meaning the habit of treating Jesus and God the Father as a brother, a husband, a friend, as a living person who is also part of our putting ourselves at the table of our quarrels, of our hugging each other in bed, of our hard efforts, the way which you listen to me and I look at you. This is the problem. And this is the path we will take. And the direction will be just that. So now, entering into the theme, why the truth of love? You know that the Pope wrote on the joy of love. It is beautiful and it says many things. I cannot, however, forget what the Pope said a few days ago. A few days ago in Georgia, he had a dialogue, discussions with the people. A woman named Irina questioned him on marriage. The Pope responded like this: marriage is the most beautiful thing that God has created. The Bible says that God created man and woman in his image. The man and the woman become one flesh and are the image of God. I understand, Irina, when you were explaining the difficulties that many times are in marriage, but you know who pays the cost of divorce? Two people are charged. Who pays? And Irina responds, both of them. And the Pope says, both? More. God pays. Because when you divide one flesh, one dirties the image of God. And the children also pay. You do not know how much suffering children, young children, when they see the quarrels and separations of parents. Everything must be done to save the marriage. And then he further says, you, Irina, you also mentioned a great enemy of marriage today, the theory of gender. Today there is a world war to destroy marriage. Today there are ideological colonization that destroys. But it does not destroy with weapons. It's destroying with ideas. Therefore, we have to defend ourselves from ideological colonization. So the Pope wrote The Joy of Love. But it is also capable of saying that when God, your marriage, arrives at certain moments, it dirties the face of God. To the bishops in Poland, the Pope has said that he spoke with Pope Benedict of this question. And the Pope Benedict told him, Your Holiness, what is happening in our days in the aggression to the Creator? You are attacking God the Creator in the origin of things, in the substance, in the original design of man, woman, family. Then if we have chosen to speak the truth of love, it is because there are all the problems. But it is necessary that Christians know that the first truth is not what happens between me and you. You have to know, Christians have to know, the first truth is that which I am making to God. What God has done to me. God has made a beautiful design, sweet and charming. And here I mean the community, the society. But we are destroying it. I would like a couple understands that suffers because the family is not as it should be. But I would like to first of all, and this is what we must create, couples suffer because God suffers. The story of Jesus on the cross says this: God suffers, the Father suffers, and what happened to Jesus continues in the world. The Pope has even called it a world war against marriage. If I would say to you that there's a world war, would you not be preoccupied? It means that it attacks God. But with God, you cannot attack Him. You can attack only the image of God. That is yourself. When you attack the person that is next to you, the image of God, it is God who suffers, and it is still the same question. Do you want to set up a Christian life in which God is truly involved? Do you want to set up a Christian life in which God is truly involved? Look, the worst formula is not to say that God does not enter, but is to say that God does not exist. It is not that speaking against God, but is a simple act as if He were not there. This is the formula of atheism, most radical. That there is or is not does not change anything. This can happen to anyone who theorizes it, who lives it intentionally, and if we are not careful, can also happen to us. That in a formal level, we are ready to say that God exists, but God is everything. But in fact, that when we realize that He does not enter, or better, we do not allow Him to enter, I would very much like to find myself with the experience of a couple in crisis that really puts themselves before God. And He says to her and vice versa, I do not mind what you have done to me or me to you. I do not mind the limits that we have when we hurt ourselves. let's try to live half a day of prayer to see what we are doing to Jesus.
Che si mette veramente davanti a Dio, davanti a Gesù, e lui dice a lei e viceversa, non mi importa quello che tu
Do you remember Pascal says that the Passion of Christ was almost 2,000 years ago?
importa quanto ci facciamo male, proviamo a vivere, non so,
But last until the end of the world. Everything we do is now part of the history of Jesus. If a couple had the courage to say, let's spend a little time to meditate and to suffer that which we do to Jesus, or when in goodness is, if there were two young people happy and joyful and in the mountains during a walk, if they would pass a little time to say to Jesus how much they are happy that he rejoices with them. Let's set a community of life in which Jesus comes from, starting from the small groups. This Jesus enters there. It is called forgiveness and many other things. This first lesson today had to be on the person. What Christianity has brought into the world by reflecting on Jesus was this. A person who is most perfect exists in the world and is unique and irreplaceable. When one understands it, the phenomenon of love occurs. This is the beginning. The person is what is most perfect in the world. You can have a person next to you that are coming to despise, and perhaps you were right, but you should be able to suffer because this person, who is unique in the world, is ill-treated like a bum. I suffer because that which is most perfect exists in the world, and it belongs to the Lord, and I belong to him.
Perché questa persona che è unica al mondo, ciò che di più perfetto c'è al mondo, è conciata come uno straccione, allora si soffre. Ma perché ciò che di più perfetto esiste al mondo, che, come dire, perché appartiene al Signore e perché io gli appartengo. Sia lodato Gesù.